Okay, so our guest this week is Gokul Venkatachalam. He won Scripps in 2015. I actually competed that year too, so competed together before.
Mm-hmm.
So our first segment, just some questions about how you studied, how you were on stage, and how you're continuing that in high school. Okay?
Sure.
First question is how did you get into spelling? How did that start? And did you study by yourself or did you have a coach? Tell me about that.
Sure. I mean, this is kind of cliche, but like many spellers, I got into spelling by reading a lot at a young age, and slowly as I progressed through kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I realized that I was pretty good at spelling, and then I tried the spelling bee in third grade and I got hooked. So I slowly started studying then. My mom was always helping me out. She was quizzing me, and she herself learned a lot of the rules and tips and tricks to spell words correctly. So for the most part, it wasn't really self-driven as much as my mom and I worked together as a team.
Nice. So your school has like a school bee starting from third grade, and you just kind of went from there?
Yeah, third grade through eighth grade, every year.
How did you win? Which year did you win the school bee for the first time?
Let's see. It would have been 2010 or 2009, one of those years. 2009 probably.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So how many times have you come to Scripps then?
I went to Scripps 4 times, starting in 5th grade, but I competed in my regional spelling bee all 6 times.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you like won in your second shot then, right? Regionals?
My third try, I won.
Your third? Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like when you go on stage, you're not that, like, stressed at all. Like, that's a problem that a lot of spellers have, but, like, when you went on stage, you looked really confident. Are you, like, stressed inside and you just look confident outside, or are you actually confident? How does that work?
I think there's no overarching feeling of confidence or calmness. I think I was able to be calm at the right moments. And when the camera would be on my face, I guess at that specific moment I would be calm. But there were definitely certain points during the competition where I got a little bit nervous, or I was like, wow, I really do have to go up there and spell my next word. Or I see a few people get out, like what was happening my year, with a lot of people getting out quickly. That was definitely worrisome, but for the most part, I was able to handle myself well, and I was pretty proud of that.
So when it came down to you and Vanya, I know like they went to the co-champ list, right? So that's definitely a lot of pressure because everybody wants to see 2 people win, especially since the year before you guys was the first co-champs, right? So people were probably like rooting for co-champs again. So that was, I feel like, a lot of pressure on both of you, and also you definitely wanted to win because it was your last year. So do you think you got like especially stressed at that point, and like how did you just maintain like your cool and not let it get to you? Because like when you see the lights on stage and all the people like taking pictures of you, it's a lot, you know. How did you handle it?
Yeah, I think by the end of it, I was just kind of in a zone. I guess in your Zen moment, as a lot of people like to call it, but it really was like that. And I can attest to that because I barely remember what happened. When I'm trying to reflect and think about what was actually going on in my mind, I have no idea. That moment between the 23rd word and I guess the second word is a complete blur. I remember bits and pieces of it, or thinking, oh, is Vanya going to get that word right? Okay, well, that means I have to get my word right, and thinking about all the possible scenarios, but that's about it.
Oh, wow, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that because when I was in 2016, when I missed Use the Capion, I actually don't remember spelling it or walking off on stage. If I try to think back, like, I think when you're stressed, you kind of just, your memory just goes out the window, and you need to function in that kind of state too, so it's hard.
Definitely. I'm not going to contest that I was stressed out. I think by the 4th year I was competing, I knew how to handle that stress, and I think it's a valuable skill.
Right, yeah. Yeah, like the more you do it, you kind of learn to deal with it.
Yeah, for sure.
So the year before you won, you missed a word. I think it's a word that you knew, right? Did you know that word?
Well,
what word was it?
It's a word I had studied before. It was Kierkegaardian. Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah.
Ironically, I'm really into philosophy now, and it would be embarrassing if I missed Kierkegaardian, but at that point I didn't know anything about philosophy, so Kierkegaardian was no more important to me than any other eponym out there, and I just forgot it when I should have remembered it.
Right. So I know that like you got third and you still had a year left. So how did you handle that? You were probably really frustrated like right afterwards, but
that's one thing a lot of people think, but I honestly was not that frustrated because
oh really?
Yeah, I had not expected to go that far.
Okay.
Yeah, runner-up was just huge for me. I was really surprised when all of a sudden I was one of the only people left on the stage that year. And I mean, I thought in retrospect, after I got out and I was sitting down, I knew all of the rest of the words, and I was like, that would have been cool if all three of us could have won, but that didn't happen. I wasn't too disappointed though, and a few weeks later I was like, wow, I really could have just been done with everything by now, but I think I was a much better speller in 8th grade than I was in 7th grade.
Right, yeah, I feel that. So like you were satisfied, I think, right, then with where you were. So how did you keep your motivation up to do better next year? Because if you're like, oh, I got runner up, I'm really happy with that. Were you just satisfied with that, or how did you keep up your motivation that like I want to do better next year and study? Because like you said, you were probably way better prepared in 8th grade, right? So you probably studied a lot more. So how did you?
It was merely just, it was actually a lot of fuel for me, because I knew that if I can get this far and then the two people that were ahead of me are not going to be able to compete again, I should be able to do better next time. And that was the approach that I took.
So how did you continue your interest in spelling after high school? Because you seem like you've been doing this for a long time. So after you won, like it must have been weird to just completely stop spelling, So
yeah, for sure.
How did you continue that in high school?
Well, honestly, for the first year after I was done with the spelling bee, I didn't do anything spelling related. I think I helped out a few people here and there in the local St. Louis area, but for the most part, I just took a break. And then a year later, after the 2016 Scripps Spelling Bee, I started coaching, and that's primarily how I've stayed involved. And I've also been volunteering for the North-South Foundation every year since I won. So those are the two big ways I stay involved with the spelling community.
Nice. So I know that you do a lot of debate, right? I think that's one of your interests that you do a lot in high school. So was that something that you were influenced in any way by the spelling bee? Because like you said, you got better with it at time, like going up on stage. So did that influence you in any way to do debate? And were you interested in that when you were studying for spelling too? And you just had to push it down because you had to center yourself on spelling? So how did that work?
Honestly, my involvement in debate wasn't too related to the spelling bee. I think I was kind of interested in politics towards the end of 8th grade, but definitely not to the degree I was by the end of my freshman year. Most of those kind of interests were sparked by debate. Prior to debate, I didn't really have much else going on, because spelling was the dominant interest in my life.
All right. So the spelling bee is definitely, it teaches you a lot of things like time management, and one of the bigger things is how to handle stress, because there's not like much bigger stress that a middle schooler can face in being on national television while you're trying to win a competition.
Yeah.
So that's really, really hard. But something else that's really hard for high schoolers is college apps. It's something that I'm going through right now.
Yeah. And
I know that you did that last year and you got into Columbia, and I think you're moving there like this weekend, right? So
yes, I am.
How did you handle the college apps and that entire pressure to, like score high on your SAT, you need to take so many APs, you need to get into a great college. Mm-hmm. How did you like focus yourself into doing that, and how did you handle that stress? Did the spelling bee stress management help you in any way? How did you just face that?
Yeah, I think the spelling bee stress management definitely did help me out. I definitely ran into academic challenges in high school. I think almost everyone does at some point. And just knowing that I've worked way harder than how hard I have to work to get this thing done. That would be my approach, because I knew I was studying for the spelling bee a lot more than I was studying in high school. It's just a matter of you're studying something different and perhaps not as interesting as spelling. And that was the approach I would take, and it helped with stress management. In terms of college apps, I think one of the biggest ways I was able to handle that, and I'm not saying it was perfect or anything, I was still very stressed out my first semester of senior year, but realizing that it's a process, it's a 4-year process of applying to college. Each thing you do starting from freshman year counts. That definitely helped me because I didn't feel that push to get more things done at my senior year. I was ready to reflect, write my essays, and apply to these schools, and hopefully they'll examine me holistically. That was my approach.
Right, yeah, and that's something that definitely needs to be stressed, because what a lot of people do is like freshman and sophomore year, just take it super easy, and then junior year rolls around and then they take like 6 APs and then you need to take your SAT, and then they do a bunch of things, and like while that is going to help somewhat with your resume, colleges also look for, like how long have you been doing something? Like, have you been interested in it since the beginning of your high school? Like if you all of a sudden just rack up these things in junior year, it's not really going to help that much, and it's just going to make you more stressed. So
yeah,
I agree with that. So that's it for our first segment. That went really well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not really going to do the second segment, the one that I used to do, just talking about speller friends, because I feel like we've talked about a lot of the people that people are friends with. Mm-hmm. So we're just not going to do that segment anymore. And so we're just going to skip straight to the last segment.
Cool.
Which is rapid fire. Okay?
Yeah.
So first question, what's the time in your entire life that you've been the most stressed, like in a single situation, and how did you deal with it?
About a year ago, I dealt with some personal issues relating to a friend, and I think dealing with that, I sought help from other friends, from parents, and even my teachers that I was close with, and that really helped me manage the situation.
Cool. If you think like you had never really gotten into spelling for some reason, what do you think you would have focused your time on in elementary and middle school?
I used to swim competitively before I was interested in spelling. And I think I was okay enough where if I hadn't gotten involved in spelling, I would have probably continued swimming, and maybe I might have gotten into politics and stuff like that early, since I would have had more time.
Mhm. Do you ever feel like the spelling bee, since you just like had to pour so much of your time into it in elementary and middle school, that kind of kept you from doing some other things that you might have wanted to, or like kept you from getting a head start on anything else? Have you ever felt like that?
Yeah, for sure. Heading into high school, I realized that there were so many books I wish I would have read in middle school that I just didn't have the time to read. And ironically enough, because I was studying so much for the spelling bee, I actually wasn't reading as much, and reading is one of my biggest passions. So that's something I was able to catch up on. I started reading a lot in high school, and it definitely made a difference.
Yeah, I can relate to that personally. I started spelling because I love to read too. Mm-hmm. I feel like, I don't know if it's actually that cliche of a thing, but that's how I started too. And like, even though reading helped me a lot in spelling, I kind of just started studying words and not reading anymore, and it wasn't fun. But now,
yeah,
back to reading. So, new trophy or old trophy?
I like the new trophy, but people disagree with me on that, and it's whatever. I thought it was cool.
Do you have a favorite word?
Yeah, I still really like the word sang-froid. I think it describes my personality at certain points, and I just think it's a fun word.
Cool. So, the Nunatak moment, so that's what it's called, I guess.
Sure.
Basically your winning word.
Yeah.
I know, like, you just spelled it without asking for any info, right? Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of people have done it since then, but that was kind of the first thing. So was that, like, did you, like, plan, like, oh, if I win, I'm gonna just spell the word, or were you just, like, ready to get the entire thing over with and you just spelled it?
It was a little bit of both. I was, at that point, I was aware that this is my winning word, And I think the thought had crossed my mind before when every speller thinks about, oh, what am I going to do if I win the spelling bee? And maybe, I don't actually remember if I've thought about this or not. All I know is that at that specific time, I was ready to be done with it. And I think I knew it was my moment, so I knew it would be fun to take advantage of it.
Yeah. So since we skipped our second segment, you can just do like a mini version of that. So are you still in touch with anyone you met at the spelling bee and like talk to them regularly, someone you're close with? Is there anyone like that?
Not necessarily close with, but I'm still in contact with the Shiva Shankars. We meet up every once in a while. I see people at the North-South Foundation, and recently I've been in touch with Nicholas Rushlow because we were roommates at the North-South Foundation, so it was really good to catch up with him.
Oh, nice, cool.
Yeah.
So you've been to the spelling bee like 4 times, and then you came after too because you won. So which year would you say was your favorite?
2016 was way more fun than having to compete. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, I feel that. Yeah.
And if you talk to Vanya, she'll agree too, because both of us got hounded by basically paparazzi, but just everyone wanting to take pictures with you at the after party, so you don't really get to enjoy it. That was what went on in 2015. In 2016, we didn't have to deal with any of that. It was just nice to actually enjoy the after party.
I understand that. I seriously do, because like even though I didn't win, you know, I got quite a lot of that too. Like you're just trying to, you know, like wind down at the after party after like the finals and then the banquet, and then there's just like this like swarm of spellers like trying to get your autograph and everything. And
yeah, also in 2016, I think at some point we stayed up very late, like 4 a.m. We were in the Gaylord lobby playing football or something, and we got yelled at by the security guard. That was fun.
Oh yeah, that's the security guards. There's a spot actually, I think. It's like, you know how like there's the entrance to the ballroom, and then on the right side there's like an elevator. I don't know if you remember this, but like if you go down, there's a spot where the security guards like don't even go for some reason, and so we just hang out there every single year till like 5.
Well, that's cool. I respect that.
So you start college very, very soon, right? Are you excited for that? Are you nervous? How are you feeling for that?
Definitely both. It's bittersweet leaving home, but at the same time, I'm ready for new challenges and finally being able to really focus in on what I'm interested in intellectually, and also being exposed to new people from various other parts of the world. That'll be cool.
Yeah. What are you majoring in again?
At the moment, I'm considering a joint major in economics and philosophy, but for sure I'll have some sort of economics degree, hopefully.
Nice. So last thing to finish us off, what's a piece of advice you'd give to young spellers right now? Because the spelling bee like environment is completely different from when like you and I competed. So what piece of advice would you give to aspiring spellers?
I think even though the bee is obviously a lot more competitive, I think the core purpose of it hasn't changed at all, and that's primarily for people to learn a lot about language, to figure out how it interacts with us in the world, and to figure out how each word that we say has a history behind it. Learning all of those things is still the most important factor, and every single person that does well in the spelling bee, or even doesn't do that well in the spelling bee, takes something out of it, and at its core, that's still the most important part.
Right, I agree. Thank you so much. It was great.
Yeah, no problem.
Right, I agree. Thank you so much. It was great.
Yeah, no problem.